Yes, that's perfect. All right, great. So, hopefully you guys realize that we're up here as a group during our teaching time. During this time, we're in the middle of this series called... That was so weak. Okay, here we go. It's called... This changed everything. I like how some people are just like, everything. Something changed. Okay, so this changes everything. And the idea behind this series is that Jesus lived on the earth over 2,000 years ago in a totally different part of the world, where people acted a lot differently than they act around us, and where life was just like totally different than life is today. But despite all of that, as Christians, as people who follow Jesus, we believe that his life, his time on earth was a moment in time that changed things for us. A man that lived 2,000 years ago on the other side of the planet somehow changes things for us. And I think it's okay to admit that that sounds a little bit crazy. I don't think God is afraid of us saying that, because it does sound a little bit crazy. It is a little hard to wrap our heads around that someone that lived all the way over there so long ago could have a difference in our life. But hopefully, as we keep going through this series and as we keep examining different parts of Jesus' life, we'll start to see that that makes a little more sense, that Jesus really does change things. And so to think about Jesus' time on earth being a moment that changed everything, I want us to think about some moments that might be a little closer to home and might be a little easier to relate to, but were still moments that changed everything. And so I asked some of our leaders to share a moment that changed everything in their life. And so Eric and or Stacy, I'm not totally sure who it's going to be, are going to, Eric and Stacy Poe. Who knows Eric and Stacy Poe? If you do, yes, a round of applause for them. So Eric and Stacy are going to share a moment in their life that changed everything for them, that changed a lot of things in their life, to give you a little feel of what we're talking about when we say moments that change everything. So, give it away, or give it up for Eric and Stacy Poe. There you go.
So Evan asked us to share moments that change everything. And so I did what I typically do, and I started researching my life, going through every little detail, saying, all right, where's something that changed everything? Well, there are a lot of things I saw that changed some things, or changed a thing, or made a perspective look different. I went to college, right? That changed some things. I started living on my own. My salvation, that changed a lot, right? I mean, that's a big one. But since he had asked us to share, so what's something for us that changed everything? Well, she had a few things of her own in her past also that changed a lot, all right? And there's one that sometime, maybe later, you get to hear more about, but she had a close friend of hers that died of cancer, and that changed a lot. But when we thought of us together, there's sort of a picture that we thought of that really changed almost everything for us in a moment in time. All right? So, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we were going to try to be on top of things and get the picture sent to Evan so he could put it in a PowerPoint, but we didn't. So, no drawing, please. So what I need you to do is just picture this. We have a favorite picture in our photo albums at home, and it is of a house, the front of a house. There's snow on the ground, and on one side of the house there's a real estate sign that says sold, and hanging across the front of the door is a sign that says it's a girl. So you going to explain that a little bit?
Again,
okay.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay, so they sold a girl. No. All right. So here's the thing. You see, we have been praying for a while. Since we've been married, we wanted to start a family. That was one of the things that we had in common. It was one of those goals we had. And we've been praying for the right time, and we've been trying to have a baby for a while and asking God, when's this going to happen, Lord? And so that was one thing that was going on. And all of a sudden, hey, great, we're going to have a baby. That's awesome. And then we sort of looked at each other and went, we don't have any room in this apartment for a baby. So we need to get a house. Well, again, I research things to death, and so I started looking at every house on the market. Almost not an exaggeration. I would sit there for hours scrolling. Nope, too expensive. Oh, look at all the rooms in this house. That's nice. And look at all the rooms in that. Oh, that one looks nice. Yeah. And then I look, that one's in California. That's not going to work. Okay. So So we prayed about both of those things happening. Little did we know that they would both happen at the same time. Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, on a Wednesday, we went to the hospital, delivered our first child, little girl, on Wednesday, which was awesome, exciting, definitely that point that changed our lives. But we kind of put two together. We had a baby on Wednesday, and then we left the hospital on Friday, and we went to sign papers for our house. So we went home from the hospital to sign papers for our house, spent one night in our apartment, and then moved the very next day. So there was a lot happening in those 3 days. So as we looked at that, we thought that's definitely got to be one of the times in our lives when everything changed. Not only did we go from being just the two of us, we went to having a baby, and not only did we go from renting a little apartment that could fit in this room to being homeowners. So we just thought we'd share quickly a few things that we felt like that changed for us.
So change, obviously there was a before and there's an after, right? So we started to think, well, how did that change things? So up to this point, yeah, I was pretty spontaneous, and even after we met, we continued that. She's more planned, but she sort of stretched a little bit, and we did a lot of things. Just I'd come home from work, let's go here. Okay, great, we can do that. We can go, and responsibility wasn't my strong suit. That's the best way to say that, I guess. So all of a sudden, we find out that we're going to have a baby, and that's one thing. She is asking me to find a house, and okay, so now I've got to be responsible. Well, a couple other conversations kicked in too. You see, we had said that when we had a family, we wanted a parent to be home with the children. So all of a sudden, reality starts hitting as we get closer and closer, and then, yes, we got the house, and oh my goodness, we're going to the hospital, and I realized I've got to now be a father. I've got to now be responsible for a house that I own. If something breaks, I've got to fix it or find someone that can. On top of that, my wife is going to stop working, well, she had, and I'm going to be financially responsible for not just the two of us, but also now for a child. And then on 4 or 5, I don't know what number I'm up to now, I also started thinking, well, I got to be the spiritual head of a house. I mean, yeah, I did my own personal devotions, but now I'm going to have to lead somebody that I'm responsible for. I'm going to have to lead the entire family. So for a guy that was sort of carefree and responsibility was second or third or somewhere on the list, if it made it on the list some days, now it's got to be number one. And that was, for me, that was a lot. I mean, that really changed my whole perspective. It changed spiritually. I really had to just trust in God now for some of those things, because I didn't know how to do all that. Okay, emotionally, I thought, well, I got married and I love her, but how am I going to have enough love for a child now too? I mean, can I love them both completely and still have enough love for God? And so there were a lot of things that just me looking into the future and going, wow, that's a lot.
So all those things are similar for me too, except for my biggest change was, in responsibility was, I couldn't just think about myself anymore. I mean, we considered each other, but when the baby needed to be fed, it didn't matter how I felt or what I was doing, I had to feed it, her. And no matter what, if there was a diaper that needed to be changed, I couldn't just, I'm watching this show or I'm doing this. So I learned a lot about selflessness and getting rid of some selfishness in my own life through that too. And just the responsibility of, I tend to worry a lot, so there are a lot of things that changed that were out of my control, about, just everything with having a family and a child and what's going to happen and will they be okay and healthy and all that stuff. So it was a change in that way, but we both agree that in that there were challenges, but those instances where everything changes so often, there's so much joy and so many positive things that come out of it too. So we wanted to end on that positive note.
Right, so the joy, of course, we've got a new life, and she brought immense joy, and God proved himself 100% faithful. Not only was there enough love to go around, but she brought in a whole ton of love for the family as well. And And any of you that have younger siblings got to see that. I mean, maybe initially it was pretty cool. Maybe it's rough now, I don't know. But when they first come home, oh my goodness, you know, that, for me, that almost washed everything else away. I'm like, I can do this. I can do this, you know. And so that was amazing. But then our faith increased. Not just because we had to trust God more, but as we started looking back over the whirlwind that was those couple of days of the birth, signing, getting the house, and all that, we started looking at the blessings. We had to move our entire house. And she was no part of that because she had just had a baby. And she was taking care of our daughter. And so I'm going, oh boy, here we go. I got to move the whole house. The church family showed up in droves. I mean, people we didn't even know were showing up going, yeah, well, we know you're from church. And they're just putting things in, and another van came up. Whose is that? I don't know. Hopefully it gets to our house and it doesn't go somewhere else. We were just loaded. I took one trip over to the house and I never went back to the apartment because I stood there and directed traffic. She sat at our house taking care of the baby and entertaining people that wanted to see our daughter. And her family managed everything there, got everything in boxes. Somebody organized traffic, I don't know who. I stood at the other apartment just telling people where to put stuff, and it all got put away. It's amazing. The church family came through, and God did that. God answered our prayer for a daughter. God answered our prayer for a house before we were raising children. And as we started counting those things, we're like, oh my goodness, this is amazing what God just did in this whirlwind that really did change all of our perspectives. And because we had those few things, then that gave us a whole new faith to move into all those challenges. So yeah, challenges came with the joy came. It was pretty awesome. Cool, thanks.
Yes, thank you for your praise. Okay, so that moment, as you can see, a new child coming into their life changed everything. Life was very different before the birth of the child and very different after. So that's what we're trying to grasp when we're talking about Jesus' life changes everything. Just like they had a moment in time that changed everything for them, we think that Jesus' life changed everything. And so the past couple weeks we talked about what part of Jesus' life changing things. What part of his life changed things for us. Past 2 weeks, what do we talk about? Jesus is what changes things? Birth. Jesus' birth changes everything. Good. So we're going to move on in Jesus' life and move more into like his time of ministry when he was teaching and when he was interacting with people and doing miracles and all that sorts of stuff. So we're going to look at 3 short stories from the Gospels, all right? 3 stories from the Gospels and each of these stories there's like 2 characters. So there's Jesus, and then, which is like a given most of the time. There's Jesus, and then there's one other character. And I want you guys, when we read these stories, to be focusing on that other character, whoever that someone else is. So we're going to read these 3 stories, and I'm just going to read them like back to back to back. I'm not going to comment much on them. I'm just going to read one, move on to the next, and then we're going to come back to them a little bit later on. Okay, sound good? So the first story. Can I have a volunteer who wants to read the first story? It's this long, right here. Here we go. Joy, would you like to read it for us? Thank you very much. All right, everyone, listen to Joy. She reads from Mark chapter 12.
Jesus sat down near the collection box in the temple and watched the crowds drop in their money. Many rich people came in large amounts. Then a poor widow came and dropped in 2 small coins. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I tell you the truth, this poor widow has given more than all the others who are making contributions. For they gave a tiny part of their surplus, but she, poor as she is, has given everything she has to live on.
Great. Okay, so that's the story. Thank you, Joy, from Mark chapter 12. Yep, you can give it up for Joy. Next story. Matthew chapter 8. Can I have a volunteer to read it? Volunteer. Hope you want to read it for us? Okay, I'm going to try to come back there. Here we go.
Large crowds followed Jesus as he came down the mountainside. Suddenly a man with leprosy approached him and knelt before him. Lord, the man said, if you're willing, you can heal me and make me clean. Jesus reached out and touched him. I am willing, he said. Be healed. And instantly the leprosy disappeared.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Hope. We have joy and hope. I like it. All right, so, and then this last one is from Luke chapter 7. I'm going to read it. It's a little bit longer, and it goes like this. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to have dinner with him, so Jesus went to his home and sat down to eat. When a certain immoral woman from that city heard he was eating there, she brought a beautiful alabaster jar filled with expensive perfume. Then she knelt behind him at his feet, weeping. Her tears fell on his feet, and she wiped them off with her hair. Then she kept kissing his feet and putting perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know what kind of woman is touching him. She's a sinner. And then over the next few verses, I skipped a few, Jesus tells this little story about this man who, to one person he lends him 50 coins, and to another person he lends 500 coins. And neither of those people are able to pay the man back. But the man decides to forgive them both. He forgives the person of 50 coins and forgives the person of 500, okay? So Jesus tells that little story in that ... space. So he tells the story and then says, I tell you, this is Jesus speaking, I tell you, her sins, and they are many, have been forgiven. So she has shown me much love. But a person who is forgiven little shows only little love. And then Jesus said to the woman, your sins are forgiven. Okay, so those are the three stories. With those three stories in mind, and with those three characters in mind, there was a poor widow in the first story, there was a sick leper, and then there was the sinful woman in the third story. I want to put those in our back pocket for a second. So remember about the stories, remember the interactions, remember what the people would have been like, and just hold on to those for a second. We're going to come back to them, okay? So, in the meantime, I want to ask you guys a question. Who has heard of the American dream? The American dream. Anyone ever heard of that phrase? You're like, oh, it's the American dream. Okay, so some of you have heard that. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a few minutes and with people around you, not yet, people around you, talk about what the American dream is. Like, what makes up the American dream? What things are included in the American dream? Jonah, what did I say, Jonah? What things are in the American dream? So talk with some neighbors around you, then we're going to come back and have a little brainstorming session, okay? So talk about the American dream. What is it? What's the American dream? Alrighty, let's bring it back. So, hopefully you had a couple minutes to talk about the American dream. We're going to have a little brainstorming session here about the American dream and hear what you guys have to say. So, what is anything about the American dream? What is it? What, Thomas?
Well, I think it depends on the person.
Alright, one quick, two-word thing. What's the American dream?
Faithful Christian.
Faithful Christian? Okay. Faithful, I'm going to draw this fish for Christian. Someone else, American dream. Perfect family, cool. Can you guys read this all right? This pen's a little. Perfect fam. All right, another one, moving on. Someone over here? American dream? Hard work equals get to the top. Is that accurate, kind of, to what you said? All right, someone else. American dream. Hope.
Have money.
Have money. I'm just going to write money symbols. Nate, did I see your hand up? No? Justin.
Go to war with other countries and protect them.
War. Anyone else? American dream? Lizzie. Fantasy. Someone else? Joy, you have one? Be the best of the best. Is that Gabriel's voice that I hear? Yes. Ferrari, okay? That works. I don't know how to spell Ferrari, really. Ferrari. Griffey. What is it? Have a job? A good job. Good job. College, did I hear someone say? Go to college. Education, did I hear someone say? Everything's perfect? Okay, I'll just write perfection. Perfect. Couple more. Another one? No fear? Does that work?
Yeah. Moving to Europe.
Europe. Colia. God, okay? Alright, one more. I have one nice space for one more maybe. Grace? A big ranch, okay? And sideways. Chick-fil-A, amen. We'll end on that one. Okay. Alright, so, take a look at this list. the American dream. These are the things that we came up with. Just a couple days ago, I did the same thing that you guys just did. I sat down and I made a list of what are things that I think are the American dream. So I want to just show you my list. A lot of them are similar. Hopefully you can read this. So I said, make a lot of money, have a good job, whatever that means, live in a nice house, again, whatever nice means, raise a nice family, be generally happy in life, do things that are really fun, have nice things, always have things your way or have them like come easily. So some similarities between this list and that list, but hopefully you see there could be a lot of things that make up the American dream. But you guys get the general gist of what we're talking about when we said, okay, cool. So I was reading this book and it gave this definition of the American dream. I don't have it up there, but it says this. It says, the American dream is to reach a point in your life where you don't have to do anything you don't want to do, and you can do everything you do want to do. So you don't have to do anything that you want to do in America, and you can do everything that you want to do. I thought that was a pretty good definition of the American dream. Guys in the back, you all right? Essentially, the American dream means to have the most in life, to be the best in life. We wrote like we said no fear, something like that. Being the most comfortable in life. Those are the things I think of when I think of the American dream. But this American dream, I think, is clearly, very clearly not Jesus' dream for our life. I don't think it's Jesus' dream, because we see over and over and over again, when we're looking at Jesus' life, looking at stories from the Bible, that the people that Jesus pays attention to, and the people that Jesus spends most of his time with, and the people that Jesus seems to be most comfortable with, and the ones that he seems to care most about, are actually the ones who have the least things in life, right? They're actually the ones who are in the worst condition in life, and they're the ones who find themselves with no one else caring about them. I want us to go back to those three stories that we read about, the three characters who Jesus interacted with. As we said there was the poor widow, there was a sick leper, and there was a sinful woman. So the poor widow, let's think about each of these characters. The poor widow, no one probably would have had time to think about. She might have been on the side of the street begging. People would have just walked by her, passed her by every day. No one would have cared about this poor widow. There was the sick leper who everyone was probably scared to get near, scared to touch because of the skin disease that they had. And then the last one was the sinful woman who people probably said all sorts of mean things about. She had a bad reputation. She was maybe known for sleeping around. Just a really bad reputation for this sinful woman. But it's interesting that these are the people like this are the people that Jesus spent his time with. If Jesus would have started a church, he kind of did start a church, we are his church, but if he would have started like a church building, it's these types of people that would have been sitting in these seats, that would have been filling the seats of Jesus' church. But when I look at us today as followers of Jesus, when I look at our churches and our homes and our lives, I don't think we've made them a place where these people feel comfortable. I don't think we've made our churches a place where these people feel like they can come. I don't know if we've been people who welcome the poor and care for the outcast and show attention to the people who have a bad reputation. I just don't see us being those people. And to show you what I mean, I want to show you a couple graphs. Now, this might feel like you're in like math class or something, but hopefully I can explain. So, here we go. This is a graph. It's very hard to read. Okay, I'm just going to explain it. So this is a graph of education in America. And this says, these are different degrees that people can get. This says a high school degree. This says some college degree, like they went to some of college but then ended up leaving. This is a college degree. And this is, I think it says post-grad degree, so more than college. So this is percentage of all the Christians in America. This is the percentage of them. So I think this says 43. So 43% of Christians in America went to high school, okay? But this is the number I want to look at. 57% of all of Christians in America have at least some college experience. And now we say, like, that's like normal for us. Like, yeah, go to college. That's like the norm. But college is a pretty high standard. Like, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of money to get there. 57%, so more than half of all the Christians in America have gone to at least some bit of college. I think that's saying a lot, okay? This next graph is set up in a similar way. This is income, okay? So who knows what income is? When I say income, what does that mean? Just spell it out. How much money you make. Okay, so this says, it's again hard to read. This says less than $30,000. This says between $30,000 and $40,000. This is per year. And then these numbers are like 50 to 100, and then more than 100. 65% of Christians in America make more than $30,000. Now, just to give you like a little context, the average about income per person in America is like somewhere around 30. It's give or take. I think it was like 28 last time I checked. So, 65% of all the Christians in America make way more than the average person in America. And a lot of them are making more than $50,000 and even $100,000. Okay? So that was a lot of numbers for you. But I show these graphs just to point out that as a whole, Christians, people who are following Jesus in America, do really good at the American dream. We're pretty wealthy, and we have a pretty good education. We do well at pursuing the American dream. But unfortunately, I think that's a sign that we haven't become a place where the poor widows and the sick lepers and the sinful women can feel comfortable. In fact, I think if we're honest, a lot of us would probably say we're a little bit uncomfortable around those people, right? Because it's really easy to say, like, yeah, I'm a Christian, I love God, so of course like I care for the outcasts, and I love the sinful people and those who no one else cares about. I really care about them. But I think when the rubber really hits the road, and when we really examine our lives, I think it's a little different. I'm not sure that we're living that way that says, I care about these people. And I know that sounds really harsh, and I know that maybe just sounds like I just stood up here and said, you're like terrible people, and you're doing everything wrong, and you need to change something. And maybe that's true, but that's not the point that I'm trying to get at. What I'm trying to get us to understand and to recognize is just to take a really close look at our lives as followers of Jesus, really look closely at ourselves and say, okay, Jesus, I saw the way that you treated people. I saw the way that you interacted with people. Is that really changing things for me? Is that changing the way that I see people and the way that I understand people and how they work? Is it changing my view of people in this world who are different than me? That's what I want us to really ask ourselves. Jesus, did your life really change things? Is it changing things for me? Because for me, in my life, if I'm honest, and Nate, you can start to come up here. When I asked myself this question when I was preparing for this, I was saying, Jesus, like, did your life, did the way that you treated people really change things for me? And if I'm honest, I don't think I'm at that point yet. I don't think when it comes to the way that I see people, that Jesus has really, really changed me. I can say, yeah, like he's made me like think of people differently. But when I look at circumstances in my life, I still don't feel like I'm totally there yet. I want to end with a couple stories, just to show you what I mean. Just this past 2 weeks ago, I was sitting in my office downstairs. I have a little office in there. And just like I do like every other day of the week, doing some like random work, sending emails or something. And this guy came into the church. And I was in my office, so I couldn't really see what was going on, but I heard him talking with some people, and he was just saying like, hey, like, is it okay if I stay here? I was kind of confused, so I poked my head out, and I looked, and there was this guy who I later found out his name was Chuck. Chuck came into the church, and I looked, and his clothes were kind of tattered. He had like sweatpants and a really big sweatshirt on. They were pretty dirty. His like hair was a little disheveled. He was not very well kept. And I heard him asking some people, he said, hey, like, I'm just looking for somewhere to stay today. I've been staying like in a tent nearby, but I don't have anywhere to go today. I don't have much food, I don't have much money. And so you might see where this is going. Chuck was a homeless person who came to McBig looking for some help. And I had two emotions in that moment when Chuck was in the building. First, I thought, oh, that's awesome. Like, it's great that McBig is a place. This church is a place where Chuck can come and feel welcome. He feels like he sees McBig and says, like, I can go there and people are going to welcome me and people are going to care for me. So I was happy to work for a church, to be a part of this family where a homeless person can come and feel welcome. But at the same time, I had to check myself because I felt uncomfortable with Chuck in the building, if I'm honest. I felt like I had to keep an eye on him. And I don't know what it was. Something, just my natural tendency was where is he? What is he doing? Maybe he's out in the hallways, I should probably go check on him. And something in the back of my mind was just not at ease, was a little uncomfortable with Chuck being in the building. And I realized in that moment, and as I've been preparing preparing for this, that I haven't totally been changed yet by the way that Jesus treated people, because I've been taught and I've been accustomed by this American culture, by things like this, the American dream that says, like, if people don't make a lot of money, or if people don't have a great education, then they're lesser than. And so there's no excuses, but that's the culture that I grew up in, and that you guys have grown up in, that has taught us people that are different than us, that don't have the same experiences as us, are lesser. And that's what I was feeling with Chuck. And so that was one moment. I know I stood up here and told you guys you need to do better, but I want to say that I need to do better as well. Second story, I was at Walmart on Monday. I was returning this book that I had bought, and I was standing in line waiting to return something. Very similar situation. Someone, like 2 people in front of me, was waiting in line. They had a shoebox, and there was this pretty tall guy. Again, tattered clothes. His hair was really unkempt, and like I could tell it was really dirty. And similar signs to Chuck, that he was maybe either homeless or like didn't have as much as I might have. And he walks up to the place to return and opens this box of shoes, and he starts telling the story. He says, like, I got these shoes, but they don't fit. They're too wide. I was going to try on another pair, but I decided I'll just return these and I'll come back some other time and try to find a different pair. Seemingly a harmless thing for this guy to be returning this pair of shoes, but for some reason in my mind, the first thing I thought was, I think he's lying. I think he's just trying to get money for those shoes. And I can tell myself that's a wrong thought to have. Why would I think that? And it's because the way he looked and the way he dressed, and I could tell he didn't have as much money. And the first place that my mind went was, I think he's just trying to get money out of this situation. And I don't tell you that to make you feel bad for me, or hopefully you don't think less of me, but just to tell you that I think we're all in a place where we can grow, where we can see people differently. And when we look at the way that Jesus treated people, the least of the least, the people that no one else cared about, that everyone else would be talking about, the people who would say, oh, did you see that person do this? Those are the people who Jesus surrounded himself with. And those are the people who Jesus said are important, and those are the people I love. And so I want us to ask ourselves tonight, do I see people the way that Jesus saw them? Has the way that he treated those people changed my outlook and changed my perspective? And maybe for you it has, and you can see those people with love and with grace. But for me, I know I still have room to go, room to grow. I still have space to go until I get to that place. And so this isn't like a message that ends with a ton of answers or a ton of conclusions, but it's to get us to think, Jesus, how do I see people? Am I seeing them through the eyes of this American dream that if they don't make money or if they don't have an education, then they're lesser than? Or are we seeing them with love and with grace? And so that's what I want us to ask ourselves tonight. So Nate's just going to play some instrumental stuff quietly, and I want us to just close our eyes and take a few minutes and just reflect on that and ask God some questions about, maybe there's specific people you can think of that you've seen and have certain thoughts about, or maybe it's just a general mindset that our world and that our culture specifically has taught us. And just take some time to really ask God, where do I need to change? Where do I need to be more like you, Jesus? How can I see people with the love of God? How can I let go of any prejudices that I have, of any preconceived notions that I have? How can I get out of this lens of the American dream is the best way, and into this view of God loves people because they're created in his image, because they're beautiful. So I want you to take just a few minutes, just you and God, not talking to anyone next to you. Ask God where you might need to be changed when it comes to the way you see people. So let's just do that for a couple minutes. Okay, so maybe you felt like God told you some specific things, or maybe you didn't feel anything, but I think it's important sometimes. Just the first step is admitting, God, like, I don't see people the way that I should see them. And maybe there's not always an answer right away, but I think that's the first step, is coming to God. And if you feel that, saying, God, I need your perspective. Jesus, I need your perspective on people. And I think when we can admit that and say that, then God can begin to about this a little more in small groups, but I just want to pray for you guys before you move into that space. So let's pray together. Jesus, the way that you treated people and the people that you spent time with and the people who you decided were important says a lot. It says a lot about our lives, and it says a lot about people, and it should change things in our life, God. It should change things. And so would you open up our minds to where we might not be seeing eye to eye with you when it comes to how we see people and the way we treat people? Would you give us love for the Chucks of this world and for the poor widows that we read about and everyone in between? Would you give us a deep, deep love and grace to see people who are different than us the way that you see them, Jesus? Give us the strength to do that. And we just admit that we can't do it without you, God. We need your strength and your wisdom to do that. So thank you that you grant that to us when we seek it, God. We love you.